Hey guys, welcome to the Goodfellow Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Barone. I got a guest today, Ken Behr. But before I get started, I want to say hello to all my fans, my crew out there. Want to say thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Don't forget about our Patreon channel, which we got a little extra content there. And we also have our shop, which we have a lot of Goodfellow memorabilia. Anyways, I got Ken Behr here with me, and I want to say happy birthday to him. He graced us on his birthday today. So thank you, Ken, and happy birthday.
My
He's
pleasure.
a smuggler, another drug smuggler who actually worked with the DEA. So I'm going to let him tell his story. Ken, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. Well, so the story starts. I guess I'll go to the beginning.
Yep.
Um, I was raised in New Jersey, and I was born in '57, so I was raised in that Norman Rockwell, I call it. If some of the younger viewers may know, but it was a quiet northeastern farm town. We had a horse. I grew up on my grandfather's farm. My father had a house on the farm. He worked in the city, so he'd drive into the city every day. And we just had this great, simple lifestyle. And 1969, my father got transferred from the city, from New York City, from his job there to go to New Orleans, where my family had a business. So I moved to New Orleans. And so, the older guys like you and me might know, even older than me, but, I went from cows and horse shit and the Norman Rockwell world to the Sodom and Gomorrah of the Deep South. All of a sudden, and it's 1969, so it's free love, Woodstock, hair, bell bottoms, and I had never seen any of this. I mean, my good friend, I ended up becoming good friends with a guy named Frankie Monteleone, and one of you guys, and his father owns. The family owned the Monteleone Hotel, very wealthy family, great hotel in New Orleans. Great, cool hotel. You got to go there if you go to New Orleans, and at least sit at the Carousel Bar and get a drink. It's well known. Anyway, he turns me on to a joint, my first joint, and right before that, my father had put me in the pool. We're swimming, and he goes, "Hey, has anybody offered you drugs?" And I said, "No." He goes, "Well, you'll tell me if it ever, da da da." And then he passed away, like right after we moved to New Orleans, really right after that speech.
Wow.
So here I am, 13 years old, living in a strange town, learning how to eat red beans and rice, and I smoked my first joint, and then the next thing I did was a quarter hit of Orange Sunshine LSD acid. So I guess in that case, the marijuana was the gateway drug. And but I mean, it was just the 70, 69, 70, it was just what was going on.
You
So
tried things.
my mother decides, my mother was from Brooklyn. She didn't feel comfortable in New Orleans. She wanted to get back down to it, where her peeps were. And so she decides a friend's living in Hollywood, Florida, right down here and next to Fort Lauderdale. So
Right.
just come on, we're going to go down and meet with these people and, check it out. Maybe we move. So what happens is we end up moving to Hollywood, Florida in 1973. She figures she'll get us away from the drugs of whatever of New Orleans. And I'm like, buddy, you couldn't have made 1973 was the day that, like, that's like saying I'm going to move to San Francisco in 1949 to get away from the gold. Or Palo Alto in the 70s, I mean,
Right.
It was the epicenter of the drug explosion. And one of the things that had happened is, so I can preface, prior to that time, marijuana was coming out of Mexico, and it was terrible. It was stems and seeds, and it was just nasty. I mean, we still smoked it, but like in New Orleans, people were more into pills and LSD, and they really weren't. They smoked pot, I mean, and hash, but what happened was, actually, a good friend of mine who wrote a book, Tommy Powell, was one of the first guys to figure out, hey, Colombian weed's way better than Mexican. So, and Colombia, what people don't understand is the closest South American country to America is Colombia. It's 1,500 miles away. So that's why people started smuggling Colombian weed in, and Jamaican, because Jamaica's about 600-700 miles away. Jamaican weed was kind of on the same level of Mexican, unless you get the lamb's breath, the really good stuff. As which I did. We smuggled out a load of lamb's breath when I was a kid.
What about the Thai weed? Remember the Thai weed they used to
Thai
have?
sticks. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Thai sticks were great. Me and my brother used to take. Me and my little brother used to go to Pier 1 Imports.
Mhm.
I hate to admit this, but at least I never cut any coke. Never cut a line of coke in my life. I always sold it the way I got it. But we went to Pier 1 Imports one time, bought a Venetian blind, broke it down, got some twine. When we grew up on a farm, you learned the twine that ties the bales together of hay.
Mhm.
We untwined it, got the thread, and tied the buds to the tie stick and tried to convince people that we were selling them tie sticks. And people are like, dude, these look like you made them yourself. I go, no, the Thai guys just weren't good that night. But I did help a friend of mine, Donnie Steinberg, who's in it's one of my stories in the book, smuggle in like 60,000 pounds of Thai weed from Thailand. So I actually did bring in some real Thai weed.
Nice.
Finally, eventually. But
Nice.
yeah. So we're in Florida, and we're no father, a mother that's working, got a nice house because my dad set us up pretty good. We're going to the local high school, and we start smoking weed, and then little businessman in me starts selling weed because everybody is. Everybody in Hollywood, Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, everybody that grew up in this era touched 90. The number of people that have been involved in the drug business in one way or the other back then, astronomical. I mean, I know a guy 25 years. He's a service writer at a Volkswagen place. We started talking a couple of years ago. I told him about the book because I did 7 years federal for smuggling cocaine. I have a friend of mine that's a guitar player. I started talking. I mean, I've known this guy since high school. He's like, oh yeah, I was selling kilos for some Peruvian guy. It was everywhere. So what I like to say is, if it was a product, we were products of our environment. Maybe if I'd have been in a steel town, I would have been, or a coal mining town. Some of us would have been in that, and some would have been lawyers and doctors. I mean, look, my older brother is a lawyer. My younger brother's a stockbroker. Not everybody got, my younger brother dabbled with me. He was my right-hand man. You could come in my mom's house and go to the left and go to his bedroom, or go to the right and go to mine. And people thought I was giving a better deal, so that but they didn't know we were partners, right? It didn't matter.
Right.
So they used to call our house in high school the BB&G, the Behr's Bar and Grill. I'd have people knocking on my window at 2 a.m. for grams of coke. I'd slip them out the window, and we were just little drug entrepreneurs. Everybody was.
Yeah, it almost seemed legal, right?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. And growing up in that era, if you smoked a joint, sold a joint, gave a joint away, you could go to jail for a year or more. So just to cop a joint, you were breaking the law. So if I'll tell you what, I was watching something Michael Franchese was doing today, and he comments that the law made the mob. And I say that all the time. Vegas would have never been built if it wasn't for prohibition.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's my take.
Well, it's the same thing with all the drugs too. And they try to cut out the prohibition. So now, what do you think? You're going to stop everybody from drinking? That's impossible.
Right.
Okay. You can't put a blanket like that on anybody. So now, same thing with the drugs. You're going to tell people they can't take drugs. Look, I'm not, I smoked weed too. I snorted coke. I smoked hash. I did all of that stuff too for a while. I stopped when I was 14 years old. I think I started snorting.
For you.
Yeah, and I started snorting coke, I think, when I was like late 20s, and I only did it for a few months, and that was it.
Good.
Yeah.
I did all. By the way, I did plenty you didn't do.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I think I might have did LSD once, I think, but that was I was only like 12 years old when I did it. I think.
Me too. 13.
Yeah.
I don't like getting so high that I've never liked Quaaludes,
Agreed.
all that stuff. I dabbled in it. LSD. I didn't like it. I don't like being out of touch for so long.
Exactly. I used to take the hits of the green tea. They used to have THC pills back in those days.
Yep.
But my whole thing is the government is so they're not that smart. So what do you expect the bootleggers to do? They made Al Capone. They made all the wise guys.
I say it all the time.
Absolutely, I agree.
I say it in my book. How could they not have known? Basically, the big push against drugs was 1973, 74 with Nixon, and the DEA was started. But it was just 50 years earlier that prohibition didn't work. I mean, how could they have not known? So here's the thing, Joe. Here's what I say: they did know, because nobody made more money than the politicians, the lawyers, and the cops. Right? Everybody was. The cops got speedboats and fancier offices. Lawyers were killing us. Drug client's a great client.
Yes.
He's looking at a lot of time. He's got a lot of money. And the politicians like to run on it. So I don't know. I think they did know. I'll tell you something.
Go ahead. I don't want to stop you.
No, I used to make a joke. I hope Trump puts up a wall so I can start smuggling aliens, and I used to say, I'm too old to carry a 50-pound bale. Give me an alien. I can just tell him, run, amigo, run, north, go. I don't have to carry him.
Arriba. Yeah.
I don't have to carry the guy. That's what I liked.
Well, exactly. Well, there was a guy, I think it was David Webb or something like that. It was the guy that he told how the CIA were allowing the drugs in.
Oh, yeah.
And then he committed suicide. He shot himself twice in the head.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they know.
Listen, I met guys that told me,
you get a drink too.
Excuse me, that when they go to Colombia, American military planes are loading up right next to them with soldiers and forklifts. I'm talking about in the 70s, before Iran-Contra scandal and all that,
right?
Drugs for guns and all that. This guy's telling me, kid, he goes, and I was a kid. He had no reason to lie to me. He goes, kid, when I'm loading my little plane with, a bucket brigade style with a couple Indians wearing hats, he goes, there's a C-111 or whatever it is with American soldiers in uniform with forklifts loading pallets of bales.
Wow.
Yeah, and look, if you even study the Whittingtons, who I talk about in my book a little bit, those guys, they've been somehow or another, these guys own private airlines and private airports and stuff, and they own, charter flights, and their planes have been busted so many times with coke in them, and one of them went to jail for like some years, but we're convinced. Somebody wrote an article about them saying that their airport was Disneyland for spooks, meaning CIA types, So I believe, the government's involved.
Well, now let me ask you then, how did you starting to smuggle? Who turned you on to it?
All right. So again, my friend Frankie Monteleone decided he came down here to go to college at the University of Miami and ended up sticking around because there was a lot of blow, and he was really like blow, and he was my good friend. He was my bestie. And he was my brother, and so he introduced me to his dad. Had a business partner, this guy Sandy Perkoff, and his dad was, they were worth, $500 million back in the day. I'm saying the hotel alone, and they have 5 hotels and all this shit. So the old man, Sandy, we used to call him the old man, was his nickname, because we were like 18 or 19, he was 40. So I was like, oh man, he's, and he was working a deal with Frankie's dad to buy and sell boats. They were going to buy them in Florida, bring them up to New Orleans and flip them. And Sandy ended up running, as a yacht broker, Sandy was kind of he had actually been involved in, the crime life back when he was a kid. He worked with some people out of Cleveland. He was involved with the mob, if you will. And he was Jewish, so he wasn't going to be made, but he was in with everybody. And do you remember the movie Tin Men with Danny DeVito? That was him. Sandy, the guys in the movie Tin Men was made about Sandy and his friends selling aluminum siding and scamming people. The movie Tin Men, they buy Cadillacs and they drive to Miami Beach. Sandy used to tell me that story before the movie ever came out. He goes, kid, we used to make money during the summertime. And, once winter hit, we'd buy Cadillacs, drive to Miami Beach, party at the Fontainebleau till the money was gone, and then drive home and start selling again. So Tommy Sikorsky was one of the guys, a couple other guys. They actually went in front of the Senate subcommittee and that you show in the movie, anyway, flash forward to mid 70s, I meet Sandy and he loves me. I'm 18 years old. Every time he comes in town, he calls me. I bring over a couple joints and we hang out in this little trailer he rented, little mobile home that he'd use as a office when he was in town. And he started giving me little jobs to do, you know, run this over, help me do this. Next thing you know, he hooked up with some big smugglers, Donnie Steinberg and Pete Wagner. And next thing I know, they're giving me a Learjet and $1.5 million and telling me to take the money to the Cayman Islands and drop it off at the bank. And here I'm 18, 19 years old, flying around with, I bring my girlfriend for cover. We dress up real nice and pretend like one time I opened the suitcase. Oh, so you go to customs and, the bank's there and everybody is going through one customs line. I pull up in the Learjet and they know, the bank tells the guy, they open up the suitcase. It's all cash, and so the bank takes us to the bank and then we go out for lunch while they count it. One time I open it up and I come back and I see a marijuana seed in the suitcase. I guess the bankers never saw it as they're counting the money. I go like this, stick my finger on it. Not that we don't want them to know it's drug money. Yeah. Obviously, probably know, but the bank might tell you, "Hey, don't come back." I tell the story that they picked me up in a little freaking like Mitsubishi or something. I go, "Where's the armored car?" He goes, "Look, we're on an island. There's no place to steal the money. What are you going to do? Come in with a helicopter?" So I did that a bunch of times, and we were kids. And then I started doing more errands, registering boats and moving, and then eventually, so one of the things was from my very beginning in high school, I had a good friend that was kind of my drug dealing partner. My brother and I were partner on some things, and this good friend of mine, Terry, he ends up in like 77, I think 75, I don't remember. He ends up moving back to Ohio. And he's working for the Ford plant. And he calls me up. He goes, "Hey, I've been selling drugs the whole time." I'm like, when you're a guy, you try to climb the ladder, right? You try to,
absolutely.
I always joke around, disorganized, organized crime is very disorganized, you might say like, "Oh no, we had hierarchy with the, but the average guy on the street, the lieutenant or the guy hustling a deal, everybody's trying to make a buck. And it's a bunch of horse shit. Everybody's next. I got a great deal. If it's you guys, you're going to knock off a truck with TVs. If it's me, I got a load of weed coming in that never shows up, So, anyway, Terry calls me one time and says, "Hey," he's working at the Ford plant. He goes, "Hey, I think I can move some weed." I said, "Well, come down and get it. I'll give you a couple pounds." So he looks strikingly like Burt Reynolds in Smokey and the Bandit, and happens to own a black Trans Am with the Thunder Chicken on the roof. No ego involved in this guy. So he ends up driving down, leaves the Ford plant, gets, had a day off or whatever, extra day, a long weekend. I give him 2 pounds of weed, and he runs it back up, sells it, calls me up. He goes, "Hey, I sold it. I think I could sell more." And so Donnie Steinberg gives me a bale of weed. And I go, "Come on down. I got a bale." Well, that doesn't fit in the trunk of the Trans Am so easy. Like we're shoving it. We're out in the middle of the street at night, like trying to shove a bale of weed into the back of a little car, a little trunk. And he does that, calls me up and goes, "Dude, I sold it." So that started one business. And when we, at our heyday, we were moving thousands of pounds in cars up and down the highway. I had 3 cars that would hold 200 to 300, give or take, pounds, sometimes a little more. And we had 3 of those going back and forth. And if somebody brought in a smuggling trip or we had an extra weed, we'd rent cars from one of the rent-a-car places, put air shocks on them because you didn't want the cars to sag. And here we got these 20-something-year-old friends of mine from high school driving these big, grandma cars like Caprice Classics and, whatever, up to Ohio back and forth. So that was one profitable thing, right? I buy, to give you an idea, 1,000 pounds of weed back then was about $250,000. And so today it doesn't sound like, but 1970, that's like, if I knew I had that much money, I would have quit. That's like, 700-800 grand. So we would run that up and, and I'd make maybe $40 a pound, so I'd make, 40,000 on $1,000 or $250,000. But, the guy must have made millions. Yeah, it didn't work that way. One day you're making money, next day something breaks down, you lose something. The other misnomer that people that are in the business that do podcasts will make it sound like they were doing this year long. There's a season back then for marijuana. It harvests like everything else in October. Then you got to dry it, bucket, put it in bales, and smuggle it out. So if you remember, there was always good Christmas buds.
Yeah.
You know, there was always, right? But then by July, you're smoking the crap that didn't sell during, you know, the shit weed. So we kept busy running those loads. I also was working for other smugglers doing, you know, and I also smuggled my own stuff. I like to say, you know, I always said I was never a smuggler. And then when I add up the runs I did like 12 trips. I go, for a guy that wasn't a smuggler, I did a lot of stuff. The first one was my friend Frankie got busted in New Orleans. And looking back, there was some other hair on the deal. Like I turned out that he was working with Sandy's daughter. It got a little strange. My name came up. It was for cocaine. I had nothing to do with it, but Sandy suggested I leave the country. I was 18 or 19 years old, I think, maybe not even 20. And so I moved. He gives me he goes, listen, I got a guy in Jamaica that owns a place you can go down there and dry out and cool out. Sandy felt I was doing too much coke. He wanted me a couple of reasons to go down there. So I go down to Jamaica, and I'm there about 6-7 months. And I was like, fuck, I got to get out of here. This is, you know, ridiculous. It's nice, but, you know, and a couple of friends of mine come in. Big Jeff, who was a big Italian guy. He was actually from New Jersey and New Orleans, just like me. And another friend of mine, Bob Silverbullet, who's kind of like a hippie smuggler, pilot, boat captain. So we all down there, and we end up putting a trip together to bring 600 pounds of lamb's breath, the good Jamaican stuff out. So that was my first smuggling trip. We each put up some money. I didn't do any of the actual smuggling. Bob, my friend Bob, who I had lived next door to me, Bob and I have done a lot of shit over the years together. But at that time, we were just getting, you know, I was just getting started. He had his own little, in the middle of Florida, he had a little runway that was, he rented a house on a property that had, you know, multiple houses on, they shared a runway. And we brought in the 600 pounds, and I ran it up to Ohio to Terry's and sold it. So that was my first smuggling trip. I was probably 20. We brought out 600 pounds of lamb's breath. Then,
how long did it go on for, all the times you were doing it?
So I was in the drug business for about 20 years.
Okay.
I started when I was, let's say, 16, and I got busted for the second time about 20 years later. It was 1992 when I got busted the second time. And that time I got charged with Terry turned me in, you know, and we were doing it for like 12 years. And, they charged me with RICO. Never saw that coming. Never saw that.
Yeah, that's crazy, that act.
And I only had like 100 pounds when I ran up there because it changed. We were running really high end weed now. We weren't running, the 100 pounds still cost $100,000. But, you know, and Terry, you know, got set up, and, you know, it's the way it is. Here's the deal. So anyhow, the first time I got busted, so let's talk about that, because, you know, that's where the rest of the story goes. Yeah, I ran a bunch of drugs. I smuggled a bunch of weed, sold a bunch of coke. I used to say it's hard to run out of coke when you have 10 kilos in your house. You know, like you go do a little bit, go get a little more. Oh shit, there's too much to do. You know, and so you have to learn. Like all the girls, everybody's partying. I was the house where everybody came to party growing up, so I just learned to take the plate, blow the shit off the plate, and go, I'm going to bed. Everybody leave. You got to make a decision. You'll be up there for 3 days if you don't. You know?
Hell yeah.
So it got in 1988. We got to the point where things, you know, look, I started in like in the 70s, right? So Bob Silverbullet comes to me and he says, hey, how'd you like to do a smuggling deal? I need some help with. I go, what you got? He goes, Bruce Goodwin, who's a friend of ours, he's got 40,000 pounds stuck in Canada, and he wants us to smuggle back into America. Now that's counterintuitive, right? Because the weed's worth, or the coke, whatever you're smuggling, less in Colombia than it is in Fort Lauderdale. and it's worth less in Fort Lauderdale than it is in Cleveland and Washington, and it's worth less in Cleveland and Washington than it's worth in Canada, right?
Makes
The farther
sense.
north you go, the farther from the source. So I go, what? He wants us to smuggle weed back into America? What the fuck? He goes, look, he's got 40,000 pounds up there. He can't sell it. He goes, you have Terry in Ohio. I got somebody. Let's go help him bring it back into America. So Bob at this time has a seaplane. So we devised this idea. This was Bruce and Bob's idea. I just went along for the ride. We're going to use the seaplane, land in a lake in Canada, load whatever 200-300 pounds, whatever the plane can hold, because the little seaplane can't hold that much. We had to keep it below the windows because we had to land in daylight. So when, like in 85, we smuggled in 300 kilos of coke. You do that at night on a clandestine airstrip. You put up the lights. The plane, seaplanes can't land at night because you can't see.
I've heard that.
Yeah, there's no place. How do you put a runway in, and how do you know you're not going to hit a guy fishing in a boat? So in the 85 trip, nobody was coming down that road because they had Big Jeff at the end of the road with an M16 and hand grenades. So that wasn't going to happen on that night. But in 88, we smuggled the weed into, and we land on a lake in Maine. And I'm sitting there, and the plane lands, and he pulls up, and I unload it. I'm reading a book. I look down, I see moose tracks and big shit piles of moose shit, and I go, fuck this. I climb up on the hood of the truck because moose, they ain't friendly, buddy. They're 2,200 pounds of mean if they want to be, right? Especially a woman, a female moose protecting her young. So we do about 5 or 6 of those lake to lake trips. I load the weed, and it turns out Bruce left off a little part of the story. The weed had been sitting for a year in a fish house in a freezer. And the reason the weed was sitting for a year, the 40,000 pounds, it couldn't get you high. It was the worst marijuana that I've ever seen to this day. Wow. It was terrible. You couldn't get high no matter how much you smoked. So we get it. We load up about 1,400 pounds on this side of the border. And I start trying to sell it, take a couple bales, move it to Ohio, move it around. Nobody wants it. It's just terrible. So Bruce and Bob go, look, why don't we move it down to Washington, D.C.? Bob says, I have a market down there. Maybe I know there's people in D.C. I go, listen, there's got a guy down there, Tom. I go, nobody's selling this stuff. It don't get you high. But I said, all right, I'll fly up to me. And so I have in the chapter, the name of this chapter is Why I Never Work on a Holiday. Because I had made a commitment to never work on holidays or birthdays. Why? First off, I don't want to ruin my birthday every year going, fuck, remember the time I was in that joint? And secondly, I don't want to ruin my holiday thinking, man, Christmas, but also because there's more cops out, right? So I'm driving, I pick up a rental truck, a U-Haul, loaded with the 1,400 pounds we had stashed in a warehouse. Which people might sound like a lot. It's not that much. I mean, it is. It's boxes, but each 50-pound bale is about the size of a suitcase, right? So a big suitcase. So I'll tell you. As a matter of fact, the prosecutor says to me, "How did you load that in by yourself? You're not a big guy." I said, "Hey, I'm strong enough to pick up." I told her I laid it. So I have a friend of mine that got out of the business that's living in upstate New York. He's gone straight. He's out. I call him up. I go, "Hey. I'm moving a truckload of weed out of Maine to DC. I want you to help me." He goes, "Dude, I'm got a job. I'm out. I'm straight." I go, "Come on." I said, "I used to be my driver to Ohio. He used to be my driver. One of them." I go, "I'll pay you." I used to pay $1,000 a trip. I go, "I'll pay you $2,000 because it's a truck, and I'll pay first class all you want to go home to see your family." Because it was July 4th weekend. He had 2 weeks off to go home and see his family. He hadn't been home since he moved up to upstate New York.
That was nice.
Yeah, guess what happens? We get busted. Cop pulls me over. What's he looking for? Fireworks. He puts a gun to me. He tells me to open the truck. I open the truck. He sees the boxes. He cuts them open. He goes, "What's this?" "Oh, I know what this is." And he arrests both of us. So we go we sit in the county jail for 5 days because there's a holiday. There's no I'm sitting in a fucking roadside jail with a bunch of drunks, no food, because they don't have food service because they don't normally keep people overnight. So the cops had to go to Burger King and bring us food. And, you know, they come back to go, we forgot, you know, sorry. Yeah, here you guys split a burger, you know. So,
yeah.
So, and why can't I bond out? Because we're on a holiday. That's why I don't work on a holiday. It's 5 days.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So
is this when it started going bad for you?
That?
Is this when it started going bad?
No. So I it's funny. I know what you mean by that. So that's it's funny how you and I think what's good is bad and bad is good. You know, To my older brother, that's when I start doing the right thing. But yes, no. So anyway, we go to the jail I told you about. That's like a shithole, man. They didn't have flushing toilets and just got. I mean, it's so hot there. I mean, there's no air conditioning. Turns out it was the hottest summer it had been since they built the jail in the 1860s. They literally tried to burn the jail down one night, figuring if we do this, you know, the cops will let us out and we'll be outside. I go, dude, I'm sitting here watching. They're lighting paper and throwing it off the third tier and second tier to try to hit the garbage can. I'm on the first tier. I go, what's going on? I told my cellmate, who's Latin, so he knew what was going on because he could understand it. He goes, they're trying to set the jail on fire so that we can get out. I go, dude, you realize they could set the jail on fire. We could all die here. Like, they may not let us out. There might just be a bunch of smoke inhalation, you know. They may want to let us out, but they may not have the, you know, whatever. They may not. Right. So get out of there, and I beat the case. We get tried in Salem, Massachusetts, in the oldest working courthouse in America, where they supposedly where they tried the witches and burned the witches, right? And literally, my lawyer goes, you got to get up and testify. You know, we were doing an evidentiary hearing. So I got up and said it was my pot. I put it in the truck. The trooper pulled me over illegally, and I told my story. And there's a tour group going on. They're literally, like, she goes, listen, when you're testifying, this is a tourist thing. They have a 12 o'clock tour. I'm like, testifying while there's people doing a tourist thing. Beat the case, go home. That's 1988. So luckily, my friend went back to he spent all 2 weeks of his vacation in jail. He went back to work, pale white, thin. They can look at him. They go, "You went home to Florida, and, right? You know, you didn't get a tan." So he tells them the truth. He says, "I got involved with a marijuana bust," and they let him keep his job. They say, "Look, keep your job. Let's see what happens." And he ended up, doing really well there. No thanks to me, you know. And we don't talk. You know, we're still friends, but we don't talk. I don't know what happened. Yeah. So then, what happened was I kept working, you know, doing some smuggling things or selling my, you know, a lot. We really got into coke then because the weed was harder to smuggle in and coke was, you know, more profitable, but still did weed. And in 92, I drive out to Texas because there's, you know, to get some better, the Tex-Mex. I mean, I had another bust in the middle of that, but it wasn't me. It was my friend got busted and running some, you know, I financed that one. And anyhow, 92, I pick up 100 pounds out of Texas, and it's the smallest load I've ever done. You know, it's small. I run it up to Ohio to see Terry, my partner, and he sets me up and he busts me.
Wow.
And let me tell you, 32 years later, he found me on one of these talks, you know, on the internet, doing a talk show, doing a podcast, reached out to me, and we're friends. And I'm going to fly up to North Carolina. He goes, you come up here. He goes, I'm paying for everything. I'm going to give you you and I are going to party, man. You're my best friend. I'm sorry. I go, you cost me $180,000 when I got busted. I think you should definitely buy dinner.
I would think so.
Yeah. The lawyers, but the weed was about 100 and the lawyers were about 80 or 70, 80. But listen, for what people, because we're going to go into me working for the DEA.
Mm-hmm.
What people don't understand is what the cops, like, they took Terry, and I didn't find this out till later. His father, he had a big piece of property, had a construction company he built with the drug money. His father had a house, they had a barn, and he had a house. In the barn was the weed, not the weed I brought him, somebody else brought him. The cops busted him. They put him on, they handcuffed him on the couch in his living room. 4 kids upstairs screaming, cops searching the house, wife handcuffed, mother and father handcuffed on the couch too. They brought him over from the other house. The guy comes in, he goes, here's what we're going to do. He goes, We're going to put you in jail. We're going to put your mother in jail. We're going to put your father in jail. We're going to put your wife in jail. We're going to take all your real estate, your mother and father's home, everything. And your 4 kids are going to be orphans. You got 35 seconds. You in or out? You working for us or not? What's the guy going to do?
Yeah.
It's like, and you're looking at 25 years. And we know there's a guy named Ken Behr in Florida that's your guy, because 17 other people had already ratted out everybody.
Oof.
So I come up there. He also set up another friend of mine that was on the run for a cocaine smuggling trip, my friend Kelly. I'm going in to get processed. I look over, there's Kelly, and I can see him through the glass. I go, because he was on the run from a cocaine smuggling trip. I thought I got busted with, 90 or 100 pounds. Like, what are they going to do to me? Well, I'm in jail and they're not giving me bond. They're not giving me, you can't get bond till you get indicted. So one day I get a call they call me up out of my jail cell. I'm just trying to make bond. I just want to get the fuck out of it, because you can't fight a case from jail. You got to be out. The guy calls me up. He goes, "You Ken Behr?" I go, "Yeah." I'm thinking, who the fuck else could I be? I'm in the jail cell. It's either me or the big black guy, John. There's only 2 of us, and I ain't John. So he hands me these papers, and I open them up, and there's this guard, Bill, who I'm kind of friendly with, because the guards are kind of more like middle America guys like me. I'm just a guy, I'm not and he goes, I'm looking at the papers, and Bill looks at me, he goes, "Hey kid, he goes, "You going to be all right?" I said, "Yeah, why?" He goes, "You're looking at 50 years. I go, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, we're putting you on suicide watch tonight." And I look at him, I go, "No need, man. I'll be all right." Thinking, if he would have said 25, I might have been more nervous, but 50 sounded like, come on. What are you, fucking with me?
Yeah.
So I go back to my cell and I realize they're charging me with RICO. So, and I just got married, and I had a 1.5-year-old daughter. I had actually been married. Terry came to my wedding with his wife, came home from my honeymoon, jumped in. I said, "Baby, I got to go back to work I just paid for a wedding. I was out like 90 grand from the wedding and this and that." And she goes, "Don't go. I'll get a job. You'll get a job. We're married. We have a 1.5-year-old little daughter. Don't go. I'll eat mayonnaise and bread sandwiches. Just don't go." I said, "Baby, I got to go. I'm a drug smuggler, runner, whatever. That's what I do." So I get busted. And while I'm in the joint, and I was 3 months there trying to get bond. The guy next to me in the cell next to me pulls me. He tells me, he goes, "Come here." He goes, "Listen," he was pale white, had the prison tattoos. His skin was almost loosened from being in jail. So he goes, "Listen, he just done 15 years in Angola." Think about this. Remember, he went in Angola in like 78. This is 92, maybe fucking worst hellhole prison in the world. One of the Amnesty International rated it one of the worst prisons in the world.
Can't even imagine.
Yeah, he goes, "Listen, when I went in, you have a 1.5-year-old daughter." I go, "Right." Saw the pictures on the wall, He goes, "I had a 1.5-year-old daughter. You know how many times I seen her while I was in the joint?" I go, "No." He goes, "Once." So he got out of jail, did another robbery, and was back in jail. And he goes, "Take a look around. You're hanging, the mores and values you're clinging to died a lifetime ago." Now remember, a year earlier, Sammy the Bull had just rolled on John Gotti. Why? Because of the RICO law. It changes the world. So he goes, "Look around this jail. Don't look around to see who you think's a rat. It's who's not a rat. Everybody's a rat." And he goes, "Your co-defendant in your other pod, my driver and the other," he goes, "that guy's going to already ratted you out. Your co-defendant in the pod behind us?" I go, "Yeah." Kelly, he goes, "That guy's going to rat you out." He goes, "You have to make a decision whether you want to change your life." He goes, "If you're willing to change your life and get out of crime and go home and take care of your newborn baby or your child and your wife and change your life, then you should do whatever it takes. But if you're going to be a rat and then you're going to go back and sell drugs and do the same thing over again, you're nothing but a scumbag. You deserve everything you're going to get." So I still didn't buy in, I was like, and people were coming up to me in the jail, people like guys I didn't know, like a black guy from Detroit, goes, "Hey, listen, I'm never getting out of here. Take this name and phone number. If you get out, if you start, give it to the cops, tell them this is where he's at, that he's on the run."
Wow.
All right. So I get home And I get a phone call from a friend of mine. Now I'm home. I'm changing oil. I'm working in a fucking auto repair shop doing tire changes. I'm painting a friend of mine's house. I had sold my truck, and I had a $400 yellow canary yellow station wagon with no air conditioning. I had the jet skis. I had a boat. I had my gold Rolex. So I'm selling that stuff off to get some cash flow. But basically, I'm a schlep, And there's a certain amount of people that look at you, and, they're happy for that. So I get a phone call from a friend of mine, Dave Jackson, who I had met from Sandy, who was another yacht broker. And he was selling yachts. You can't sell a yacht to a drug smuggler knowingly. So what would happen is the DEA comes in and sets him up. He was selling Lear jets and 100-foot yachts. He was a big swinging dick. And they got him to sell a boat or to somebody telling him he's a drug dealer. He's going to pay you in cash. It's a conspiracy. All you got to be is on tape. So Dave calls me up and he goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" And Dave had tried to set me up earlier, tried to get me to sell him a kilo of coke, and I walked away laughing. I go, "Dave's not Dave, look how cute. Dave's trying to set me up, because I knew he was in trouble." And he was a yacht broker. He didn't, maybe did a couple lines of coke. So as soon as he invited me to his house and asked me for a kilo, I just laughed and walked out.
Good for you.
But anyway, good thing I did that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, months later, Dave's calling me up going, "How'd you like to work for the DEA?" Joe, I promise you, my wife was sitting in the kitchen. My little baby was in the high chair. He said that. I turned around. I didn't want her to hear that. I'm like, what the fuck? What are you talking about? He goes, "Listen, I'm working for the DEA out of Jacksonville." He goes, "I told them all about you. I told them you were a big time smuggler, that you'd been in the business forever. You knew everybody and you were an asset." I said, "Dave, why are you doing this?" He goes, "I'll get credit." I go, "What's in it for you?" He goes, "I get credit for what you do." I go, it's like a multi-level marketing thing. I go, "It's like Amway." And he goes, "Yeah." So he goes, "Meet me at the Floridian," which is a diner in Fort Lauderdale. It's probably had more than one clandestine. It's been there 70 years. So, I remember one time being at the at a breakfast place that's real well known, Lester's, and I walked out with Sandy, Donnie Steinberg, Pete Wagner, and me eating breakfast. Pete and Donnie were the biggest, smugglers.
Wow.
And the cops are walking out and they go, "Hey, Donnie, what did you bring in last night?" And we yell back, "There's nothing you'll know about."
Wow.
So I go meet Dave. He tells me the story. He goes, "You got to go to Jacksonville and meet this guy." And I get in my $400 car with no air conditioning, wearing the suit my mother brought me in high school. She worked at Saks, so I got a good deal on a suit right out of high school. I go, "Mom, I'm a drug runner. We don't wear suits." She goes, "You never know. You'll need it." So I drive up there and I meet this guy, Agent John. We call him, his nickname was Captain Bobby. That's what he went by. And he brought me in to work that's when I went south. I went to work for the DEA. That's when things went wrong.
Wow.
So I did 2 years undercover. We did, and working for the cops is like, it's like, "What have you done for me lately?" I remember somebody invited me to their wedding. I go, "I can't go to a wedding. I'm working undercover. They don't let me go to weddings." So,
they want you to produce.
Right? Yeah. Yep. They call you up. "Hey, my boss is going to throw you out of the program." And I brought in, it was funny. Like, people are calling me up going, "Hey, buddy, I know a guy that screwed me in a drug deal. Let me, really and truly, people are coming out of the woodwork." So I never turned in any of my friends from the, and even my co-defendant in Kelly, they came to me when I finally bonded out, and the cops go, "Listen, we're throwing the book at you because we want Kelly." I go, "Kelly never worked with me. I haven't seen Kelly. We did some deals together. Kelly was my partner back in the day. I met my first wife through him. We went to high school together. But they're like, "We want Kelly because he's been on the run for a cocaine smuggling charge. His uncle got busted and turned him in," because that's the way that works. People think when we do these shows, people will comment, "You snitch, you rat." Dude, you're missing everybody rolls today. Maybe not back in the day. Hey, in '88, me and my my co-driver, we kept our mouth shut. We got out. But by 92, when racketeering was being thrown around and, you know, kingpin status, life in prison, you know, the truth is if you got a deal that made sense to you, you're going to take it. If the deal sucks, maybe you're not. I know a guy that I talk about in my book. The guy had went up against the head of the crime family down here, Asatoro, and his son, who I knew, you know, we all grew up together, and he was going to testify against him in a loan sharking and kidnapping case. And right before he went to trial, he was found in a ditch with 5 bullets in him.
Whoa.
Yeah, and guess what? Everybody went to trial and got convicted because I'm like, why did you leave the body?
Yeah, exactly.
You just stash him in the trunk for a couple of days and then throw him in the street after the trial.
Yeah.
Don't leave the body. So now they go to court and they go, Your Honor, the jury's there. Here's the our witness. They all pled. They got convicted. But anyway, so
Jeez.
I went to work for the DEA and I made some of my own cases, you know, but I never. They called me in one time. He calls me up. He goes, I'm in town. You need to come down and see me right now. So he goes, I'm staying at the whatever it was, this Embassy Suites on 17th Street Causeway. I'm at home eating dinner with my kid, you know, my wife. I go, all right, I'll be right there. I walk in the room, and the good thing about the agent, that my handler, is he's one of the top agents in the world, but he hated paperwork. Standard.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I come in this room, and he sits down. He goes, sit down. Pulls out a legal pad and a pen, crosses his leg like he's a therapist. I think he's going to. He goes, my bosses want you to proffer yourself, and we got to know everything. And I looked at him, and I said, I can't do that. He goes, you're going to get thrown out of the program. I go, listen, everybody I grew up with is my friend. We all went to high school together. Mm-hmm. I'd have to turn in the entire town to give, you know, because you know how the proffer works. If they find one thing you leave off the list, like, you know what I mean? Oh, you left off Johnny Bag of Donuts, you're going to jail. Everything you told us is now going to be used against you. You know, if everybody listening to this show doesn't understand what a proffer is, you're agreeing to tell every single thing you've ever done or anything you know, and you implicate everybody you know. And as long as they don't ever find any one thing that you left off, nothing you said can be used against you in a court of law. But as soon as if they do find something you left off, then everything you said can be used against you.
That's right.
So it's a trick bag, right? Mm-hmm. It's a trick bag. So he looks at me, he goes, puts the pen and paper down. He goes, you hungry? I go, yeah. He goes, there's a place called Chuck's Steakhouse right across the street. He goes, let's go. I'm getting steak at Chuck's. I go, the DEA's buying me dinner again. I'm in. So here's the interesting story. So he goes, all right, we're sitting at this table. I go, all right. He goes, and you're sitting there facing the bar. I go, all right. He's got his back to the bar, which I don't know why he's, you know, normally you want your back you want to face the doors, especially if you got a gun on you, right? I always tell, if I'm ever with someone's got a gun, I go, hey, you face the door. I don't have a gun.
That's right.
And we're eating dinner, and he looks at me, he goes, see the guy at the bar in the black jacket, the red shirt? I go, yeah. I go, you know, I'm looking around him. The guy's, John's a big guy. I go, like, yeah, I see him. He goes, all right, I'm going to get up and leave. When you see me clear the door, you walk up there and you talk drug deal to that guy and find out what we can do to bust him, see what he's got. I'm like, really? Are you kidding me? It's like a senile La Femme Nikita, like the movie, you know? So he gets up, he clears the door. I walk up and I sit down and start talking to the guy. And I'm looking around the bar to see if he's got backup or what his story is. He's wearing a leather jacket. So, you know, after a while, he's opening up about drug smuggling and drug dealing. And I can talk the talk. I know when the bales came in Parliament boxes. I know when Carlos later had Condor stamps on the kilos, and when they went from plastered wrapping to duct tape to plaster to plastic. You know, I know all the history, right? So I kind of figured out this guy's probably working for customs, you know? and the reason he's wearing a jacket is because he's wired, you know? Mm-hmm. So nothing comes of that, but we ended up doing about 2 years worth of work. It was me, Dave Jackson, the op broker, and another guy that I call Sabo in the book, who was a huge smuggler, big time smuggler. And we were really effective. You know, we would, if we got a hold of something, we would end up closing the deal. We were four talented people like that.
Well, then what did they do? They let you go? How did you walk away?
So this is, yeah. So we, after years of, working for them, we ended up, the DEA had a big bust in Canada. They were trying to bust it was the Rock Island motorcycle gang, the Hells Angels, the Italian mob, and the Irish mob.
Yeah, I heard of it.
And I'm like, I like to say I had nothing to do with this. I was just there visiting. I didn't set those guys up, but they used me as a team. What the DEA was doing was now trying to put some notches on my gun belt. Plus, our handler, we were his team, and he knew how to work with us. He didn't want to bring anybody else in. So maybe I was supposed to go over here and guard the border. The Canadians came in to talk, interesting story. The main guy was such a badass. He got busted one time in Canada with a briefcase that had a Mac 10 in it with a trigger on the handle and a hand grenade.
Wow.
And this fucking Canadian cops like, all right, give him a couple years. So, badass guys. These are guys, that, kill people. And we did the. I eventually wasn't there, but they ended up setting them up for 10,000 kilos of coke.
Wow.
And so when I went, finally, my ticket was pulled. Right, I've been on the streets for 2 years working, 2.5 years, whatever it was, working for the DEA. And, the case, you can only stall the case so far. Right. The secret to any criminal case is to stall it.
Yeah.
In the one in Massachusetts with the 1,400 pounds, between the time I got busted and the time I went to the final hearing was 2 years. I would literally, Bob Silverbuller brought in a load of coke, and he had it in Washington, D.C., and he had 2 storage bins, one for the coke, one for the money. At times, I had actually went to court came down to D.C. wearing my suit, did a cocaine deal, and then fly home. And I think I did it twice, once on the way up and once on the way back, literally wearing the suit I went to court in, not the one my mom bought me, another one. And we were just, you work, you know what I mean? You're on the street, you got to make money to pay the lawyer. I got in trouble as a kid. None of these cases, a prior case, the one I went to Jamaica, got a lawyer. I said, what should I do? The lawyer goes, I don't know, kid. It seems like what you're doing is making a lot of money. You should just not get caught. Like, I'm a kid trying to find a better path, and the lawyer's telling me to stay in it, just don't get caught. So after 2 years or so, I don't remember exactly, something like that, I end up going to court, and they agree to give me probation, which is crazy because everybody else I'm the only person. But you know what I did that nobody else did? The day I got busted in Ohio with the 100 pounds of weed, and they had me handcuffed upstairs, and the same guy that came to Terry stuck his finger in his face, Michael Rosenblum, one of the worst fucking piece of shit prosecutors on earth. Tell me, kid, you got 30 seconds. And I looked at him, I said, you got the wrong guy. I ain't saying nothing. And that's the way I was trained by Sandy. I was trained never say nothing, because that's why I was able to make my own deal like that. But really and truly, I'm still friends with the arresting officer in Ohio. He just called me yesterday to tell me he retired and give me his new cell phone. I kid you not. Because every year I used to call him around Christmas, say, Dennis, you made the right decision. I'm doing good. The kids are doing good. I'm doing the right thing. And I'm still friends with the head of the DEA agent that was my handler.
I wish I could have said the same, but my guy, he stabbed me in the back, the guy I worked with for 18 years.
Really?
Yeah.
I went to my high school reunion the other day, 50-year high school reunion. And you know how many people? Yeah, you want to know how many people didn't want to talk to me? Still?
Oh, really?
I go, dude, it's been 32 years. Don't I get any 32? And I said, I worked for charities. I raised 4 kids. I built businesses. I'm still, but you know what it is? And let's talk about that with you. I kind of think that, being a rat or a snitch, growing up and, like when you got brothers and sisters, don't tell mom. You're in middle school and you push the kid off the monkey bars. Don't rat me out to the teacher. If we go to the principal's office, keep your mouth shut. So it's so ingrained in
Mhm.
people that never been in the business or been in that position that they don't understand what reality is.
Yeah.
And reality is when you're in between a rock and a hard spot, and every deal is different.
That's
If
right.
they would have said, hey, you got to rat out all your friends, and I wouldn't have taken it.
Right.
Maybe I would have done the 25 or whatever I, ended up
Yeah.
getting. I would have went to
Where you
try.
can negotiate. Yeah.
Yeah, you
I don't
negotiate,
blame you.
so I got to know about your 18. How was that? Can we talk about you? Or I know we're not. I'm the
No, that's
guest. Not
okay.
you.
18 years undercover because of my father supposedly was killed by the mafia. It sent me in a whole different course, ruined my whole life.
Yeah.
I mean, 18 years of your life. We don't got long in this life.
No,
You know what I mean? And so think about 18 years of hell for me,
I don't know
going.
how. What
Yeah.
people don't understand is it's so hard to play both sides.
Oh,
It
you're in the
just
fence in the
destroys
middle. Yeah,
you. Yeah.
it destroys you. Well, you got a book out. You must be
Yeah.
doing good. I mean, let's see your book. You got a copy of it over there too,
Yeah.
as well.
Yep. Here's the book.
Oh, nice, Ken. Oh, one step. Oh, one step.
Over the Line: Confessions
Okay,
of a Marijuana Mercenary. So
nice.
the first cover didn't have my picture on it. And somebody says, you got to put your picture on the cover. So they was thinking like Kurt, like a guy smoking a pipe. I said,
Yeah.
I'll find a picture. That's when I'm actually working for the DEA. And I remember, wait. And the picture is the t-shirt has a stick figure and it says, I swear to God, it says, see Dick sell drugs. See Dick get busted. See Dick do 10 to 20. It's like stick figures, perverse sense of humor, right? So yeah, I got a book out. I'm starting my own podcast. It's called One Step Over the Line, where I'm
Oh,
going to
okay.
interview people like yourself that have, taken one step over the line. Could be,
Willing to
could,
come on. Absolutely. We'll
you got
we'll
to come
reverse
on.
the roles a little bit.
What's that?
We'll reverse the roles. I'll
Yeah.
definitely come on.
And
Have me on anytime.
the book's on Amazon,
Okay.
Kindle, and I also did the audio book. And here's something that I failed first grade. I'm profoundly dyslexic. And that was probably my first, what happened was I remembered writing the book. So I was going to Cub Scouts. My first, I got a picture of me. Fuck Joe, if I could find it. I'm sitting in front of the fireplace in Wayne, New Jersey, my little Cub Scout uniform on. I got my pocket knife, which was, everything. I go to the first day at the den mother's house. It's her son's birthday. So I'm at the den mother's house, son's first birthday. And I tell the kids how I'm going to school in this new school. And they go, what grade are you? I said, I'm starting first grade. They go, well, didn't you do first grade at the other school? I said, yeah, I failed first grade. I got to do it over again. The kid starts making fun of me. So I beat him up in his living room. Needless to say, I was thrown out of Cub Scouts.
Right.
I remember my mother come on, can't you let him know? Come on, no. All right. Well, you got the uniform. So one of the things that I always say, is that, sometimes, we don't fit in. So we find a place. And sometimes that place is, in my instance, it was just the drug business was everywhere,
Right.
We're products of our environment in some ways,
Correct. I
So
agree.
that was my first antisocial thing. And but I survived myself. Listen, I'm 68 years old today. I got Social Security, I got Medicare. My ex-wife left me to raise my two kids. She got hooked on, after the bust, the marriage went downhill, and then
Mhm.
she got hooked on Oxycontins, and she just actually passed away in November.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, we were so
Yeah.
the kids hadn't seen her in 20 years, but we flew
Yeah, but
out
it's
to,
still, yeah,
oh
it
yeah,
still
we
hurts.
flew out to they had to pull the plug on her. She had had a stroke, and my current wife is an angel, so much different than me, like all,
Yeah.
and I wrote the book because I felt that these stories had to be told. It's not just my story in the book. It's the story about growing up in South Florida. It's a story about
Mhm.
the smuggling days, different people's stories. Adam Walsh, the kid that was murdered down here, John Walsh's son. I tell a lot of stories about the intertwining of the South Florida in the 70s. And I'm proud of it. I'm proud that I was able, like
You
I
should
said,
be.
it's on Amazon Kindle. I did my own audio book. I read the thing out loud into a microphone. That ain't easy for me.
Mhm.
And I have a website, onestepovertheline.com, where you can buy marijuana mercenary
that,
hats,
yeah.
and you can see videos and pictures of I used to race cars. So when you have drug money, you get to do this.
Nice.
Well, I don't know how to get that.
That's it this way. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Wow, that's sharp.
Miami Grand Prix. You want to hear something funny? On one of my cars, I had my bail bondsman as a sponsor. So I always say that I think everybody knew that I was a drug smuggler or a drug runner,
That's funny.
Yeah, I didn't charge him. I go, don't worry, I'll give you this for free. So
how are your kids? Are they healthy? Are they happy? Everybody's good?
Yeah, my kids grew up without a mother. My daughter's a medical real successful doctor.
Excellent.
Coming along now, and my son's 10. She's 33, he's 30. He was actually going to be he's in line to become there's talks about him that might go become a federal agent. So I said, that's funny.
It is. It really is.
I can see hey, do you know this guy?
Your picture will be up there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And my two kids from my second marriage are phenomenal.
Good.
We have it's funny, my current wife is such an angel. She helped me a little bit write the book, but she's never read it. Most of my family's never read it.
Wow.
My daughter says, Dad, you think you want to grow up and hear your mother was a stripper? I go, stripper? Yeah. I was a hooker.
Yeah. I can kind of see that, though,
Yeah, but everybody's really good. I'm blessed, Joe. I'm blessed, man. I had 2 open heart surgeries, a pacemaker. I've had 3 shoulder surgeries, half a dozen other procedures.
Jeez.
I'm walking around. I'm making a living still. I got a beautiful home.
Good for you.
So I figure, I always used to say that on my tombstone, it'll say, here lies a used car selling, drug dealing snitch. And then right below the toilet seat, have a flip up toilet seat. It'll say an author. So wow. Yeah, he wrote a book. Come on. So,
that's great. Listen, I got to wish you happy birthday again.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much.
I wish you many, many more. You're probably going to have a lot more now with all them surgeries. You're like brand new now. You know what I mean?
You hope.
I hope. Definitely, we got to get a copy of the book. We'll also show it here on the Goodfellow Podcast, and have us on whenever you get your podcast. We'd love to join you and celebrate.
I need you, man. I want to hear your story.
Absolutely.
So maybe the next week or so we'll get it figured out. We'll get you on whenever you're free. And if you like, I can send you a copy of the book if you'd like, or you can get it on Amazon or whatever you want. I mean, if you want an actual hardcover, I'd probably have to send it to you, or you have to buy it,
Yeah, but, we'll work it out, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll send you an autographed copy.
Yeah, that's what I was. Now you see, I didn't want to ask, but now you said it. That's the way I wanted it. Thank you for that.
Okay, well, we'll do that. I'll send you a copy, and I hope you enjoy it.
Oh, I can't wait to read it. So, anyways, go ahead, Ken.
I was going to say, I know you read books because anybody that's gotten busted reads books.
You have to. That's what.
You got nothing else to do in the joint.
That's exactly what I did. And the other thing too about the joint, what you were saying about it's a thing that we always say in prison: delay. That's how you always try to beat the case, because they want to get rid of you now. All right. Anyways, with that one, Ken, thank you so much again for coming on. I hope everybody from the Goodfellow Podcast enjoyed it. Guys, look out for Ken Behr's book on Amazon. Like he said, don't forget, we'll also post up your website and everything too.
Thanks.
Have a great birthday and many more. Yep, you got it, brother.
Thank you, Joe. You're a gentleman.
Thanks for coming on. Thank you so
got
much,
it, brother.
For that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
God bless you.